everyone.
Hello.
We are going to talk about some life science data protection and legislation news as usual, and you can already see on your screen the agenda of today. So first, we are going to start with life science news. Boston hospitals agree to $18.4 million breach settlement. So Boston Business Journal reports Massachusetts General Hospital, Brigham Women's Hospital, and Dana-Farber Institute Cancer have agreed to pay a combined $18.4 million to settle data breach claims. Claimants allege the hospital shared patient data with third parties. And a class action lawsuit has been filed against BioPlus Specialty Pharmacy Services over potential Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, so HIPAA, violations. And class members accuse the pharmacy of having insufficient measures in place to protect HIPAA-covered information.
Over the last 18 months, the demand for health data has grown significantly in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The widespread increase of data access, when it has happened, enabled rapid analysis and the development of evidence-based policy for managing the clinical and economic risk of the virus. However, despite this acute need for data, there are still many obstacles. One challenge is the ability to expeditiously produce non-identifiable data, which meets regulatory expectation, and that can be shared with multiple governments, academic, and commercial analysts nationally and globally. These expectations have been set high given the accumulating evidence of re-identification attacks.
And now some news about digital healthcare in Sweden. So the Swedish healthcare system is rather complex and divided among several responsible bodies and stakeholders, and could be a reason for many recent and ongoing Swedish government initiatives in the area of e-health and healthcare information standardization.
A good news in the life sciences sector, so the FBI statement on the GDPR Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct are strongly supported by the GDPR as a means of ensuring proper application of the regulation. It is widely accepted that the implementation of GDPR in the health research has been problematic and has not delivered harmonization. The FBI is pleased to confirm that its GDPR Code of Conduct on clinical trials and pharmacovigilance has progressed to the final phase of review by data protection authorities prior to formal submission to the EDPB, the European Data Protection Board. The EFPI believes that the GDPR Code of Conduct will enable the sector to align on key data protection positions, thereby providing more consistency, more clarity, and more certainty for clinical research. It will also bring more certainty to third parties, including patients, ethical committees, and hospitals.
There has been an hacking attack on Red Cross exposing data of 500,015 vulnerable people. So International Committee on Red Cross has been the victim of a cyber attack in which hackers seized the data of more than 500,015 extremely vulnerable people, some of whom had fled conflicts. And the body, which has its headquarters in Geneva, had no immediate indication as to who might have carried out the attack. It says the hackers targeted an external company in Switzerland that the ECRC contracted to store the data, and there was no evidence so far that the compromised information has been leaked or put in the public domain.
We continue with our second section about data protection. At the end of the year, in Germany, the designated German coalition parties, the SPD and FDP and the Green, conclude their coalition agreement for the new government. This coalition has big intention for this new chapter in Germany. It envisaged technology sovereignty and the potential of digitalization as some of the main areas for a technologically and economically strong future.
And some news about the new guidelines on cookies from Italian agency Guarantee have reached their deadline this month. And the Guarantee has published, you probably remember, on beginning of July 2021, their new guidelines on cookies and other tracking tools. And the purpose of these guidelines is to ensure that all websites comply with GDPR and e-privacy directive. And companies had until January 10 to comply and to bring their banners into compliance or face significant fines. The CNIL just announced it has fined Google 150 million euro and Facebook 60 million euro for unlawful use of cookies. So the restricted committee, the body of the CNIL responsible for issuing sanctions, has noted following investigations that website facebook.com, google.fr and youtube.com offer a button allowing the user to immediately accept cookies but not to refuse. So they do not provide an equivalent solution, button or other, enabling the internet user to easily refuse the deposit of cookies, and several clicks are required to refuse all cookies against a single one to accept them. So the restricted committee considered that this process affects the freedom of consent, obviously, and Google and Facebook also face a daily penalty of 100,000 if they do not fix their practices within 3 months of the CNIL issuing the decision, and which applies to the Google-owned do.fr, youtube.fr website, as well as Facebook's French platform.
After that, also related to the cookies, the EDPB, so the European Data Protection Board, has adopted new guidelines on right of access and a letter on cookie consent. During its January plenary session, the EDPB adopted this guideline and the letter in reply to letter calling for a consistent interpretation of cookies consent. In the letter, the EDPB reiterates that it's committed to ensuring the harmonization application of data protection rules throughout the European Economic Area. But you can find all documentation in the EDPB website. After that, we have the UK Data Watchdog slaps Ministry of Justice with enforcement notice for breaking GDPR law. So the UK's Data Watchdog has issued the Ministry of Justice with an enforcement order after the government department broke data protection laws by failing to process thousands of subject access requests without an undue delay.
The Austrian Data Protection Authority has decided that the use of Google Analytics violates the General Data Protection Regulation, so the GDPR. So other EU member states could follow suit as regulators cooperate in a task force in the European Data Protection Board, EDPB, as explained before. And many EU companies use Google Analytics. Many have forwarded their data to Google, allowing it to process in the US. But the Austrian Data Protection Authority has now ruled that this behavior constitutes a breach of EU law. And it is true because the CJEU ruled that the US-EU Data Transfer Agreement Privacy Shield is not in line with the EU data protection law and struck down the agreement in 2020, which rendered most data transfer to the US illegal.
After talking about the GAFA and the cookies, I will go to the state of Virginia, the CDPA requirement for data controller. So the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act, the CDPA, which takes effect from the 1st of January 2023, is both brief and direct. Controller defined in the document as the natural or legal person that alone or jointly with other determines the purpose and means of processing personal data. That they play a central role in protecting consumer data. The Virginia legislature will consider amendment to the CDPA in early this year, in 2022. The topics likely to be addressed by amendment are known, and those amendments are unlikely to make substantial changes to the obligation of controllers. As that is the case, controllers will be well advised to start early in developing and implementing their plan to comply with the CDPA.
And did you know that age verification and data protection were more difficult than it looks? The French government published a decree in 2021 concerning the implementation of measures to protect minors from accessing sites broadcasting adult content. And this allows us to take a closer look at the implementation of technical processes to check the age of users online. And at European Union level, the Audiovisual Media Services Directive requires the adoption of appropriate measures to protect children from harmful content, including age verification. And in addition to that, Article 8.2 of the GDPR implicitly established the need for some controllers to verify age by setting a minimum age requirement for children to be able to provide a valid consent to the processing of their own data.
And the last news related to the data protection. The EDPS, European Data Protection Supervisor, sanctions the European Parliament for illegal EU-US data transfer, among other violations, of course. So the EDPS issued a decision after a complaint confirming that the European Parliament violated data protection law on its COVID testing website. The EDPS highlights that the use of Google Analytics and the payment provider Strip violated the European Court of Justice decision Schrems II. The ruling is one of the first decisions implementing Schrems II on the ground and may show the way of hundreds or other cases pending before regulator.
And now, to end those beautiful news, we have again some news about the legislation. So we can have a look at the proposal changes to India's data protection bill. So the Joint Parliamentary Committee submitted its long-awaited report to the Indian Parliament after 2 years of deliberation on the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019. This is hopefully the culmination of a series of extensions provided to the Joint Parliamentary Committee and will pave the way of a strong data protection law in the world's largest democracy.
After India, we travel to UK. So John Edwards starts his term as UK Information Commissioner. Mr. Edwards, who joined on a 5-year term, spent the past 8 years as New Zealand Privacy Commissioner and before that worked as a barrister. He succeeds Elizabeth Denham, the CBA, whose term as UK Information Commissioner ended last year. Mr. Edwards' appointment comes at the end of a busy year for information rights in the UK. The ICO, so the Data Protection Authority in the UK, will be actively engaging with the government over the proposed reform for the Data Protection Act and introduction of the Online Safety Bill, as well as strengthening links with other digital regulators. The second point is the ICO will also continue to prioritize its works to protect children online through the age-appropriate design code, which has already prompted international tech companies to make changes to better respect children's rights online.
In Jordan, Council of Ministers approved draft law on protection of personal data of 2021. And in particular, the Prime Minister's office noted that the draft law aims to, for example, enhance the constitutional rights and freedoms stipulated in the Jordanian constitution, to consolidate Jordan's position amongst the countries that regulate the digital environment, also to protect personal data in light of the ease of collection, retention, and processing, and to prevent attacks on the rights of citizens and residents to protect their personal data and privacy established under the provisions of the Constitution and related laws.
After that, we go back to China. The Personal Information Protection Law, the PIPL, of the People's from the Republic of China, sets out a comprehensive framework governing the protection of personal information. According to Article 14 of the PIPL, a critical information infrastructure, the CII, operator or a personal information processor, which processes personal information up to a threshold amount specified by the Cyberspace Administrative of China, the CIC, must store within China all the personal information that it's collected and generated within China, and pass the security assessment organized by the same organization, the CAC, the Cyberspace Administrative of China, if it wants to export any such personal information outside of the country. Following the PIPL, the CAC released the draft measure of security assessment for data exporter. And under the draft measure, any personal information processor must conduct a self-assessment before it can export any personal information outside China.
At the end of December, Georgian Parliament adopted a bill to establish Personal Data Protection Service. So in particular, the Parliament outlined that the bill aims to divide the State Inspector Service into two agencies: the Special Investigation Service, which will investigate official misconduct, and the Personal Data Protection Service, which will monitor the lawfulness of the data processing and activities, among other things.
In Turkey, 5 years after the enactment of the law on protection of personal data, the Personal Data Protection Authority has introduced the new concept of data protection officer with the communiqué on the procedure and principle regarding the personal certification mechanism, which was published at the beginning of December 2021 and entered into force at the same day, so 1 month ago. Although the term DPO is the same as the one recognized in the GDPR, and the communiqué introduced a more basic and non-compulsory system for Turkish DPOs.
In Australia, proposed anti-trolling laws could worsen online abuse and benefit internet giants. So in Australia, the Law Council and defamation experts have criticized the coalition's anti-trolling bill, warning that it will deny victims of defamation recourse. Indeed, it would appear that page owners will not be liable, even if they have been informed of a third party's defamatory comment and have the power to remove it. And some suggest that social media page operators should still be liable if they are informed of a defamatory comment. And it seems that this bill will benefit commercial media companies and internet giants, but will do nothing to better protect children online. And finally, this bill could remove the liability of those who suffer online reputational harm to obtain meaningful redress.
So we cross the entire world and we go back to the EU. So the EU Parliament adopted the DSA, the Digital Service Act, and negotiation with Council to follow. So the European Parliament announced last week that it has adopted with 530 votes to 718 with an agreed text for the proposal for the DSA, having introduced several amendments to the European Commission first draft. The original text. In particular, the Parliament highlighted that the DSA aims to define clear responsibilities and accountability for provider of intermediary services, and in particular online platforms, such as social media and marketplaces. But I want to add one point very quickly. So I don't know if you see, but the European Parliament pushed to ban target ads based on health, religion, or sexual orientation. Last Thursday, the European Parliament moved closer to banning targeted ads based on sensitive data, including religious belief, sexual orientation, and racial or ethnic origin. A large majority of lawmakers voted to prohibit online platforms such as Facebook and Google from showing commercial to users based on their most intimate information in the EU draft content moderation bill known as the Digital Service Act.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Manon.
Thank you, everyone. I think that these are being some interesting news, and we will see you in 1 month for more interesting news.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye, thank you.